For more than 500 years, the Forbidden City was the center of China's imperial world. Behind its magnificent walls lived emperors, empresses, princes, and thousands of palace servants. Among them was a special group of men whose lives were unlike anyone else's. They were called eunuchs. They served the imperial family, guarded palace secrets, managed daily affairs, and sometimes even controlled the fate of entire dynasties. But when the last emperor of China lost his throne, the ancient world of the eunuchs came to an end. This is the story of the last eunuchs of the Forbidden City. For centuries, eunuchs were a unique part of China's imperial system. Because they had been castrated before entering the palace, they could serve close to the emperor and the royal women without creating concerns about family relationships inside the palace. Their duties were many. Some cleaned and maintained palace buildings. Some prepared food. Some delivered messages. Others managed important departments and handled valuable treasures. At the height of the Ming and Qing dynasties, thousands of eunuchs worked inside the Forbidden City. They wore special uniforms, followed strict rules, and lived a life completely separated from ordinary society. For many poor families, becoming a eunuch was a painful but possible path to survival. Some parents believed that sending a son to the palace could bring financial security to the family. But the price was enormous. The operation was painful and dangerous. Many boys never recovered. Those who survived entered a world where they had lost one life and gained another. They were no longer ordinary people. They belonged to the emperor. By the late Qing Dynasty, the power of the emperor was already weakening. Foreign invasions, internal rebellions, and political crises damaged the once powerful empire. Then, in 1911, the Qing Dynasty collapsed. China became a republic. The last emperor, Huai, was only a child. But a special agreement allowed him to continue living inside the Forbidden City with his royal household. And surprisingly, the eunuchs remained. Although the empire had disappeared, the old palace system continued. Inside the Forbidden City, the routines of imperial life continued almost as if nothing had changed. Eunuchs still served the young emperor. They still carried messages. They still performed their traditional duties. But their world was slowly disappearing. The last emperor of China, Huai, was surrounded by eunuchs from his earliest childhood. Because he was isolated inside the palace, eunuchs became some of the few people he interacted with every day. They dressed him. They served his meals. They accompanied him through the enormous palace complex. Some eunuchs were loyal servants. Others took advantage of the young emperor's isolation. Because Huai was a child and had no real political power, some palace servants exploited the old system for personal gain. Treasures disappeared. Ancient objects were secretly removed from the palace. The Forbidden City, once the symbol of imperial glory, was becoming a place where old traditions slowly decayed. In 1924, a dramatic event changed everything. A military leader named Feng Yuxiang forced Huai out of the Forbidden City. The emperor's final connection to imperial power was broken, and with him went the eunuch's last place in Chinese history. Thousands of palace servants had already left. Those who remained faced an uncertain future. Many were old men with no family, no profession, and nowhere to go. For their entire lives, they had belonged to the palace. Now the palace no longer needed them. Leaving the Forbidden City was not freedom in the way many people imagined. For former eunuchs, ordinary life was extremely difficult. Many had no children. Many had no relatives willing to accept them. They had spent decades following palace rules and had little experience surviving outside. Some opened small shops. Some became servants in wealthy households. Some lived in temples. Others spent their final years in poverty. They were living reminders of a vanished world. A world of emperors and imperial ceremonies. A world that could never return. Among all the last eunuchs, one man became the most famous. His name was Sun Yaoting. Born in 1902, Sun came from a poor farming family. When he was young, his father made the painful decision to have him become a eunuch. The family hoped that palace service would bring a better future. But shortly after Sun entered the palace, history changed forever. The Qing Dynasty had already collapsed. He never served a powerful emperor. Instead, He became one of the final witnesses to the end of Imperial China. Sun later recalled his experiences inside the Forbidden City. He described the strict hierarchy among eunuchs, the complicated palace rules, and the strange life of serving a ruler who no longer ruled. During the later years of his life, Sun lived quietly in Beijing. He became a symbol of a forgotten generation, a man whose body and destiny were shaped by a system that no longer existed. Sun Yaoting died in 1996 at the age of 93. With his death, the living memory of China's imperial eunuchs disappeared. After the end of the imperial era, the Forbidden City itself transformed. The palace that had once been closed to ordinary people became a museum. The halls where emperors made decisions about war and peace became places where visitors walked freely. The treasures once hidden behind palace walls became historical artifacts. But among the thousands of objects and buildings, there is another invisible history. The history of the people who served there. The eunuchs. They were not emperors. They were not generals. They rarely appeared in official records. Yet they were essential to the daily operation of China's imperial system. For centuries, eunuchs have often been remembered negatively. Some became powerful and corrupt. Figures like Wei Zhongxian during the Qing Dynasty gained enormous political influence and became symbols of abuse of power. But most eunuchs were not powerful politicians. They were ordinary people trapped inside an extraordinary system. They sacrificed their bodies and their personal lives to enter the palace. Some found opportunities. Others suffered greatly. Their stories reveal a different side of history, not just the story of emperors and wars, but the story of the countless people who lived behind the scenes. Today, visitors walk through the Forbidden City and admire its golden roofs, magnificent halls, and priceless treasures. But the voices of those who once lived there have disappeared. The emperors are gone, the royal family is gone, and the last eunuchs are gone. Yet their stories remain. They remind us that history is not only written by kings and conquerors. Sometimes, the most fascinating stories belong to those who stood quietly in the shadows. The last eunuchs of the Forbidden City were the final witnesses of a world that had lasted for centuries. A world that vanished forever. If you enjoyed this journey into China's hidden history, subscribe for more untold stories of emperors, warriors, philosophers, and ordinary people who shaped the past.